Hi, I'm Elisa, and welcome back to my channel. So last time that I made a video, I talked about the results for my neuropsychological testing. So in that testing, they found that I met the criteria for autism level 1, for ADHD combined type, bipolar 2, generalized anxiety disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. So I thought, I know in my last video kind of said like, oh, I'm not going to focus too much on that kind of stuff or like just really make it about that. But I also was like, well, I mentioned that this was kind of what's going on and then I just leave it. So I should probably kind of like show or at least talk about like how these impact me or show up in like my daily life. So I thought I could just do like a video for each one. And I'm sure there's more stuff that'll come up, but I was just kind of like for this first one, I was looking at OCD and just kind of doing some research as to like what exactly that entails, the different types and subtypes and different stuff like that. So OCD really is just intrusive, unwanted thoughts. Like that's the obsessive part of it. And then the compulsion part of it is to have like repetitive behaviors that either can kind of be anxiety like reducing or just kind of help you with whatever is distressing you. I guess in my research, I found that there are four main types of OCD, and then there are some subtypes. But so for the four main types, there's harm, contamination, hoarding, and then just right. So with these, I just thought I would kind of like walk through and say like how these have shown up in my life. And it's funny because now that I like have this diagnosis and all the other diagnoses, and I'm kind of like looking slowly, just kind of looking back on things over just growing up or, throughout my life and how these things kind of have shown up. One type of OCD is contamination OCD. So this is where you might be afraid of germs or bugs or any dirtiness, like any of that kind of stuff. I know this kind of, I think I went through a little period when I was in high school where I got a little bit obsessive about brushing my teeth. And I remember like it was when we lived in Panama, and anytime I ate anything, like I had to go brush my teeth. I was just very like I couldn't have eaten one thing and not follow it with brushing my teeth. And so it just be kind of became this thing that just made me feel better and made me feel like less self-conscious and all of that kind of stuff. Another way that this showed up, the contamination one, was when I was in college. That's when I first started to really take like a big dive in my mental health. And I remember I kind of went through this period where I was afraid of things getting contaminated, like my food, my drinks. I got, which I never really had an issue before, but I went through all of a sudden I started getting really kind of like obsessive about germs and about feeling like something was going to get into my drinks and I didn't want to share after anybody. And I didn't want like any bugs if I had a drink and I had a straw. I would always make sure to like tuck the straw and stick it in there so that nothing could like crawl into my drink. And like that was kind of the something that bothered me. Like I was just very focused on it, too focused on it. And one thing that actually helped me with that was so when I was in college, we lived in a house with, it was me and four roommates. And great people. And so anyway, so we lived together and two of my roommates, they went out and they came across this stray cat. And so they ended up bringing this kitten home to me who was named Luna. And so that helped me so much. And I think the biggest reason for that was because I no longer was so focused on myself. Like then I had something else to take care of. And I turned all of that kind of like obsessive and compulsive kind of thoughts and feelings and actions that I was doing, and instead kind of turned all of that focus onto my cat. And so that helped me. And the more like I was around her, the less I got bothered by just germs and all of that kind of stuff. Like that started to sort of like wane away. Um, so yeah, so that was just one thing that helped me a whole bunch with that. The other one, another type was harm. And so this is when you are just, you have these thoughts or your feelings that you're going to either harm yourself or harm someone else. And it can go against like your values. And it can just be these very like intrusive, unwanted thoughts. And I know like for me, one of one of mine is, and I know it's ridiculous because these can be ridiculous. Like, you're not going to actually do this, but like in your head, you're afraid you're going to do this. So something as simple as, let's say I'm at a stoplight and I'm at the stoplight, I have my foot on the brake, and then someone is like walking across the what's that word? Crosswalk. And so they're walking across the crosswalk, and as they get in front of my car, like the only thought I have is I'm going to accidentally put my foot on the gas and I'm going to hit them. And so I'm like I'm focusing so much on making sure that my foot stays on that brake because I'm afraid like I'll accidentally do that. And in all reality, I know I'm not going to do that. I know that's not an easy thing that's just going to like slip and my foot like goes from the brake over to the gas and oh no, I hit them. I understand that, but in that moment, like I have this I'm just kind of panicky and stressing that I'm going to do this and hurt somebody when that's not actually my intention. Um, and then, oh, another one of these. Um, so this one is so when I drive, like this is a big concern of mine is even just when I drive, when you're going along and you're like, okay, I could easily like go off this bridge or I could hit this other car or I could do this. And so like all these thoughts start going in my head and I don't want to do any of this. I don't plan to do any of this, but it's like these thoughts are just like there and I'm trying to push them away. And so one of the things that like has helped me with that, especially like with driving, is I used to have kind of this repetitive thing that would just get stuck in my head. And it's silly because I don't know why it was calming to me, but it always like would help sort of relieve whatever stress and I could get my thoughts off of it. And in my head, I would just repeat the simple phrase, I have two daughters, one who is 13 and one who is 9. So now it would change to 14 and 10. And that was it. Like I would just keep repeating that. Like I have two daughters, one daughter is 13 and the other is 9. And so it's like, I don't know if that just kind of like pulled my thoughts more to like what's important to me, which is my girls, and could get me out of my head, with that or what. But I do find that when I'm driving, like that will repeat in my head quite often. Another thing that I do, um, I'm constantly looking, and this could be part of like the autism thing, but I'm constantly looking for patterns. And that's something that really helps soothe me. So if I'm in the car, and I'm at a light or whatever, like I'm constantly just searching around and I will feel this like heightened sense of anxiety until like I can find numbers and I can kind of put them in a sequence. So whether it be on a license plate and let's say it's like 3142, just making that up off my head. So in my head, I would go, okay, well, 3 plus 1 is 4, and then 4 minus the 3 is 2. And so I don't know. I do like all this crazy like math that like in my head somehow like helps it all make sense and it gives me like a sense of relief and I can breathe. Anyways, oh, back to the contamination one I forgot to mention, and this is a now one is one of the things I kind of struggle with contamination. And this was one of them that when I got tested, she brought this up that she was saying that this is kind of like a rumination, but it's almost a little bit like I think about it too obsessively. So that she would say it falls in like this category. And that is like I still have issues with bugs, like ants, cockroaches, of course, because who likes a cockroach? And but ants or fruit flies, don't get me started. Those I will go in, like everybody knows when there's like one ant. If I find one ant in our kitchen, I'm going into ant mode. And everybody knows because they know that like you can be having a conversation with me, but we're in the kitchen. But the whole time you're trying to talk to me, I am scanning. Like I am constantly scanning, like in this sense of like complete hypervigilance of like, where's an ant? So I'm looking at the cupboards and the sink and I'm like looking everywhere. And if I find find one more, like I'm going into like things are going to get torn apart. I'm going to be searching behind stuff. Like I just go a little kind of psycho with that. Um, and same with fruit flies. Cannot stand fruit flies. And so when we do, if we get those, like let's say we have some bananas that like got too ripe and so we forgot about them, or whatever, like I will again will get a little bit obsessive, but I have found, so if you ever have issues with fruit flies, is that if you take a cup or glass or whatever, and you put some apple cider vinegar in there, and then you take just a dollop, just a little drop of, not a dollop, because I think a dollop is more than a drop, a little bit more of like dishwasher soap, like dish detergent soap in there, and then you cover it with a piece of saran wrap and poke some holes in it, and then just let it sit, and those things will get drawn to it, and they will die in there. So the soap in there is it just helps break that surface tension so that when they land in it, it'll actually, they will sink versus like being able to kind of like stand on top of it and then get out of it. Um, just a little tip in case you need to know that, which had nothing to do with anything. Um, so with the harm one, it was saying that like some of the things that people might do is like to constantly like check. And I will say like this is definitely one of those where I even get like worried in the house about like, did I check all the doors? Did I do, and I just kind of will like keep going through this list of like things that I need to do to like help calm me down. All right, moving on. Another type is called the just right OCD type. And it was saying that this one is kind of like an obsession with symmetry, and it can become a little bit like all consuming, or you can fixate on something when it feels a little off balance. Definitely do this constantly. Um, I've always had this like where things just don't, and maybe that's something like, okay, I like to design jewelry. And as I create my pieces, I can tell as I'm making it whether or not something feels right. And if it doesn't, like I know, like, nope, not there yet, because it just, that doesn't really make sense. That's not really fitting in what I'm talking about. But I do, like I get a lot of this where things will just feel off. And so I have to either like adjust it or fix it or have things like symmetrical or whatever. And so it just helps me with like, I think it's just like a stress reducer for me. To just kind of have things either like aligned or in an order, or I love to organize everything, which really isn't OCD, I guess. Like, I guess that's more just liking to organize things, whatever. Okay, moving on. And then a subtype is magical thinking. So this one is where you have like irrational or superstitious beliefs, and definitely something that I have. Like I remember being when I was younger, like sitting on the front porch, and when a car would drive by, and you're like, okay, if the next car is a white car, then blah 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 is gonna happen. And so then like a white car would pass, and I'm like, I'm magical, like I'm a genius. But it also is one of those where like you might think that if you don't do something that like a catastrophic event will happen or something bad is going to happen. And so for this, for me, like here's an easy example of this. So when I was a teacher, I would drive to work on the highway, and there's this one house that is like there's the big retaining walls. I don't really know if that's the right word. These big walls, right, that kind of block like the neighborhoods from the highway. And one of those, there's all these trees that like are towering over this wall. And one of them has someone who lives there put up there a huge cross, and another one they put up like the American flag. And so both of these like light up. And so when I would be driving to work in the mornings, I would always pass this cross. And so every time I crossed past the cross, I would say, "Good morning, God. Good morning, Dad," and like blow kisses to them. And I always every once in a while, like I would get distracted or I'd be passing another vehicle. And so, like during that time, like when I'm passing them, the cross would be behind the vehicle. And so I would kind of go into little panics, feeling like because I didn't do that, like something bad was going to happen. And so that's kind of like that magical thinking. Another one are like 666. Mm. Like I don't even like driving behind a car who has that on their license plate. I would never, if I was given a license plate with 666, I would say, nope, can't take that one. I'm going to have to take another one, just because I feel like it has like bad juju. I don't know. I don't like it. Um, and then, uh, but yeah, so you just think that there's going to be like these catastrophic things. And so they're saying that there's like this thought action fusion that when you kind of think something, that you think that then there's a higher probability of that something happening. So, for instance, when I think about like, oh no, something could happen to one of my girls, then I feel like I put that out into the universe and now that could happen. And so that puts me on edge. Um, Another thing that I'm trying to think where this one would fit. So another thing that like I guess would also be sort of magical thinking is when I think about like for instance my oldest right now, we're trying to like give her more and more freedom because she's a freshman in high school and she's yearning for that freedom. And so when I let her then so like we'll let her go over to the playground or different things like that or meet up with some friends, but I'll have like a moment where a thought will pop in my head that like something bad will happen. And then I have to really fight against myself because in my head, I think, well, because I thought something bad was going to happen, it means something bad is going to happen. And if I don't do anything and something bad happens, then I just allowed it to happen when I knew that it was going to happen. And so, so yeah, it's a lot in here. Um, so yeah, so anyways, I guess OCD really is in a sense like also like a way for you to like get this ensure like safety. And so there's just like this overwhelming drive that like you have to have things like a certain way to make everything be okay. Um, but yeah, so that's that. That's the OCD. I'm sure there's more ways that it shows up, and I'm sure like I'll bring those up or talk about it. But really, I think those are my big ones, and especially the ones that affect me most now are like the driving, and I tend to just kind of like avoid driving somewhat, um, if I don't need to. And then, um, and then yeah, the other ones. But thank you for joining me. And sorry, I just kind of got lost in my thought and like zoned out. But I hope that I hear what you guys obsess over.